Hello! Hey, it's Jeremy from jerry.net. I see we've already got some folks in the chat. Ion Rocks is in there, American Swordfish. Thanks for showing up, guys. All right, well, let's get this started. For those that are new to my channel, my name is Jeremy. I draw comics, do artwork, and I share my creative process online. If you'd like to support my work and get additional bonus videos, you can support them at patreon.com/Jeremy. If you would like to read some of my comics online for free, go to comics.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. And speaking of support, today is a fantastic day because I have a large number of new Patreon supporters. And I would like to take a few moments to acknowledge them and give them all a shout out. Apologies if I butcher the pronunciation of any names. And if you want to correct me at any time, feel free to drop me a message on Patreon, or if you're here watching in the chat, just say, hey, it's said this was said that way. Because we all, occasionally butcher names that we're not necessarily familiar with. And I see Epic Trilogies in the chat too, and Shamai. Thanks for dropping by. So, new Patreon subscribers. We've got Allison Johnston, Alan Morris is a new Patreon subscriber, Amy Kolar Anderson, Andy Rogers, Becky Barnes, Black Hair Demon, Blake Davis, Charis Loke, Karina St. Martin, David Sonderid. Thank you guys. We've got Eric Draws Art is supporting the channel on Patreon. Gavin Gray Valentine. Thank you, Gavin. Jack Zoyce, who has been subscribing for a few months now. He was one of our early subscribers. Thank you so much. We've got Jeremy Putnam, Joanna Barnum, Julia Harris, Julian Beresford, Kelly Sparks-Salici, Mia Arajo, Peter Palmiotti, who also, I think he was my first Patreon subscriber. He also has a fantastic YouTube channel as well. You should check out Peter Palmiotti on YouTube. Philip Byers, Samurai Duke, Seth Rutledge, and The Watercolor Naturalist. All of you guys, thank you so much for supporting the work that I'm creating, helping me be able to put more time towards my artwork. I really appreciate it, so thank you. And again, if you viewers watching are not currently supporting the channel, I would appreciate it. You can support at any dollar amount. The lowest pledge level is $2, but even if you want to pledge lower than that, you can click on select custom pledge and pledge just $1. Every little bit helps. So, let us get started. You know, it's funny that I started by mentioning the support because I titled this video, What is Your Creative Noose? And I usually try to leave these things open and loose. By the way, I've got another page of Morningstar issue 7. Again, for those who are new, Morningstar is the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven, told as a Western. It is an 8-issue comic book series. I'm currently drawing issue 7 right now. So, let me get my brushes out and get started here. So, as I started saying, what is your creative noose? And it's funny, I had just the other day I was drawing a page, and the panel that I ended up using as a thumbnail for this video was of the character Raphael about to be hung. He's on the back of a horse, straining, he's got a noose around his neck. And I was thinking about the creative challenges that I've been facing over this past year. And the biggest one really is about, I guess, the business side of art. And I realized that I've been spending a lot of time doing things that I don't necessarily want to do because I feel like they're good business decisions, when in the end, what I really want to do is spend my time writing and drawing. And the thing is, what I've recently come to the conclusion is that I've given myself, or I'm in the process of giving myself, permission to not focus as much on the business. Only in the sense that if what I really want to do is write and draw, I feel like what's been holding me back a tremendous amount is that I'm not spending enough time on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis actually doing the artwork, making new issues, writing new stories. So I want to put more time towards that. And the challenge really is that I actually have to stop drawing to think about this. This is kind of a deeper thought, and it's not something I can say while I'm drawing because I really want to get right. I want to accurately and clearly convey, express what I'm trying to feel, because it's sort of a complicated issue. I think for most people that make art, their goal is to spend their full time doing their personal art. For the longest time, I have held down a day job, and I continue to hold down a day job. I am very, very lucky that my day job is a creative one. I work as a toy designer. It's a fun job. I work with cool people. I'm lucky to have it. That said, I've always said that the main reason why I have a day job is so that I don't have to constantly be chasing freelance while trying to make art on the side. Because from times when I have worked freelance, it's been very feast or famine. And all of that time that I'm spent chasing money doesn't allow me to actually focus on getting any more artwork done than I would have liked. So I think the permission I gave myself for is that even though I've been doing things like I still go to conventions regularly and things like setting up the Patreon, trying to get better at posting links for people where they can buy my work, letting people know where they can buy my work, support it, read it. If my whole thing is that the day job allows me to not have to chase these other forms of income and just let me focus on making the artwork, then maybe right now those other forms of income in terms of my personal art aren't growing as fast as I would like. But maybe what I really need to focus on is the reason why I have the day job, which is simply write and draw. Put the stories out there, share the work with people. I'm pretty sure that the next comic book that I do, I'm going to do as a webcomic so that people can just read it online for free. And then if they want to get bonus features, additional, all the things I'm putting out now. So in terms of like bonus YouTube videos once a month, they can support for those things on Patreon, but mostly just focus on producing new work. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the same way that I've given myself permission to not do as many conventions as I used to, because previously I used to do 4 to 6 shows a year, and I realized that the amount of time that it's taking to do those shows, the prep work, trying to get new artwork together, getting books printed, traveling, the time going to the show, the time being away from home, and then coming back, I was really not getting much artwork done. Like, this is the first year, 2018 was the first year that I didn't publish at least one issue. So I am getting close to finishing this issue, and I thought I was going to have it done by the end of the year, but it just, schedule-wise, it didn't work out that way. And for me, I guess the real thing is trying to get back to just putting the time into the writing and the drawing. I don't believe that an artist should solely just make the artwork and then figure out how to market and sell it later. I feel like marketing it should be a part of the creative process, in a sense of you want to build something that an audience is going to want, at least if you hope to do something that is sustainable. When I say sustainable, I mean it's not about making artwork just because that's what's popular. It's about being able to do what you want, but making something that will allow you to continue doing it. If I make something and nobody wants it, then I made it and it's like, great, I made something that makes me happy and I enjoy putting this out in the world. but I can't do any more of it because it didn't sell. So trying to balance that process, that creative process of making the thing that you want with it being sustainable. So I'm giving myself the permission, I guess, to ease back on doing conventions. So I'm probably only going to do 2 or 3. Right now, I think I only have 2 shows on the books, Amazing Las Vegas and WonderCon. So I may add a third, but doing fewer conventions and just sitting down and working on the book, finishing this one, and probably in a few episodes, I'm going to put together, well, I'll poll you guys, but I'm not going to mention it right now. But I have 3 different projects I'm thinking about doing when I'm done with Morningstar. When I get a little further along, I'll just ask everybody what project sounds the most interesting, what you want me to do next, what you people would like to see. Because if I'm starting with expand that to say, all right, now out of the things that I want to do, what do you guys actually want to see? So we will discuss that a little further on. But that's mainly what I've been struggling with, is that issue, just getting down to the business and getting back to just making, writing, and drawing. And I figured I don't want to make it all about me, which I have been doing just by this bit of a monologue. So I'm going to come back up to the chat and take a look and see what you guys are doing. But what I wanted to put out there was to ask you guys what your creative nooses are. What are the things that you feel are sort of like maybe strangling you, what's wrapped around your throat creatively, keeping you from doing the stuff that you want to do. And I'm not saying that because you're going to tell me and I'm going to say, oh, well, I've got this answer. Do this, do that. I'm thinking more of just the way that it's been in the chat, where it's a community and we're just discussing ideas and, you know, having a conversation about things. There may be other people in the chat who do have ideas and thoughts, or just general support for each other in the fact that we all have things that we want to do and are having trouble getting there. So let's see, who else do we have? I see Ghost Bunny in the chat. Hey, nice to see you. Shama says, I have Angelo and Van Gogh. I'm not sure if you mean Michelangelo. Iron Rocks also mentions, have you never looked at Webtoons? I have a few different friends whose work I follow on Webtoons. My buddy Carl Altstetter has a great series called Mirror that he recently published on Webtoons. And I think when I get around to doing a webcomic, I probably will post it on Webtoons, but it'll be more like I will repost the pages there, but the original work themselves will come from my site, because I don't necessarily think it's great to just have all of your work on a platform that you don't own. That's one thing that I have from listening to other podcasts about online businesses in general, that if you build your entire business platform on something like Facebook or Twitter and then you get banned, you're screwed. And it's not like I'm expecting to do anything that's ban worthy, but for whatever reason, if someone has a platform and they make changes to it and you can no longer be on that platform or have your work there, or the changes cause your work to not perform as well as you'd like, you're kind of screwed. But if you make your work on your own website or a platform that you own, then you can just share it. So I'm looking at Line Webtoons as probably more of an additional distribution channel. So I definitely will share work there. And I've thought about running Morningstar as a webcomic already, but since I already have several issues that I sell on Comixology, I didn't know if people who had already purchased it would feel like they were getting screwed by having something they paid for and now being online for free. So I mean, if a bunch of people were just like, do it, nobody cares, go, get yours, share, put it out there, then I would probably go ahead and put it on Webtoons. I mean, it would still require a bit of reformatting to cut up pages for their infinite vertical scroll. But, you know, if everyone was just like, do it, we want to see it on Webtoons, or they want to see Morningstar as a webcomic, then I would probably consider it. So again, just things that I'm batting around here. So no definitive answers. I'm just trying different stuff out, looking at different things. Let's see. Iron Rock says he sees a lot of independence on Webtoons. He said, definitely more angels. I think it's what drew me to your work. I think we spoke about it a while ago. Yeah, that's, you know what's funny? Is that I think that for the longest time, again, it's like take a drink every time I mention Carl Altstetter. He had told me, like, he had challenged me early on when we were doing conventions to go 1 year without drawing angels and devils. Because for the longest time in my, like if you go to jeremy.net and look at just the prints and the standalone images, I always had like a series of angels and devils, and they kind of had a sort of a kink BDSM feel to them, where either the angel was tying up the devil, or the devil was like whipping the angel. I was working out some shit. But, you know, a lot of those pieces were sort of like kind of my staple for a good long while. I think I still have a lot of ideas that run with those, along those lines. But one of the things that I've been interested in doing more of is stuff that's more mythology. So kind of along the same tone of what I've been doing with the angels and the devils, but doing it mythology related instead of specifically angels. Like for instance, a few Medusa pieces that I had, I believe I may have shown 1 or 2 videos of me drawing them. But when I went to Italy with my wife, I want to say a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, I ended up just getting really, really inspired by a lot of the Renaissance art and architecture. Like we stayed in Florence for, like I think it was 8 or 10 days. And you know what? Let me bring the camera down a little bit more so you guys can get a better view as I'm working. There we go. But yeah, so I was thinking kind of doing, like I ended up filling a sketchbook with a bunch of Medusa images. And the idea was simply that I had one piece I'd been meaning to do for ages, which was a Medusa, a Gorgon. I know, they're called Gorgons. I just call it Medusa. But it was a Gorgon, and she was being spooned by a Greek or a Spartan warrior. It was kind of like her consort, her lover. And he was a statue turned to stone, but he was spooning her in a very loving manner. I just like the idea of combining something that's sweet with something haunting. That's the kind of stuff that I'm into. And in that piece, I've had that laying around as a sketch for years. For years I've wanted to do that. And at one point, I wanted to get some friends to pose for me and get them in just the right position. And when I went on that trip to Italy, I had said to myself, well, I am finally going to, like, I gave myself permission to not work on comics during the trip. And I said, well, let me just work on some standalone art pieces. And one of the things I had planned to do was to work out the details for that piece and do kind of a preparatory drawing, a layout drawing that really nailed down all the stuff that I wanted to have in it. And while we were there in Italy, I ended up doing several sketches, preparatory sketches, working out different poses and angles and details. And in the process of doing those sketches, I kept coming up with more ideas for variations on the Medusa theme. So I think in addition to drawing more angels and demons, I may be doing more Medusa pieces too. So not saying I'm not going to do any more angels, but I'm not saying I'm done with that either, because I know that I have another story. I think one of the ideas, all right, I know I said I was going to wait to start spoiling what the new stuff I was thinking about doing was, but I'll go ahead and get into it a little bit. So some people have asked for a while now, when am I going to do a sequel to my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods? And I have figured out a story that is both a sequel to Eye of the Gods and a sequel of sorts to Morning Star. So how would I combine those two worlds, you say? That is for me to know and for you to find out. Bum, bum, bum. So that story, depending on when I get around to polling people on the other stuff that I'm going to work on, when I do start that story, it is probably going to be after a one-shot. Because I'm going to draw a one-shot, just a single issue Eye of the Gods story. But my intentional reason for doing it is I want to try doing it in a single panel format, something that would work well on Webtoons and on Instagram, something that's more shareable. So I wanted to see what would happen if I drew a comic. Again, Instagram may not be here forever. It's really hot, it's really popular right now. It's where I follow a lot of artists. It's where a lot of artists follow each other and share work. But no one's to say that Instagram's going to be here in 10 years, 5 years, even 1 year. The internet is weird. Shit just up and disappears and blows away for all kinds of reasons. But that said, I wanted to see what would happen if I designed a narrative comic book. You know, not a single panel gag like The Far Side, or a 3-panel gag like Peanuts or Bloom County. But what if I designed a single issue to run in a platform like Instagram? I mean, we've seen what happens when people do comics on Webtoons itself. But as popular as Webtoons has been for webcomic creators, there definitely are more people just looking at Instagram than looking at Webtoons. So it might be a chance to expose work to people who may never have thought to read a comic, but they see a couple of panels and they scroll through and they're like, oh, this is interesting. Let me see where it goes. And then ends up reading the whole thing. And then they're like, oh, hey, I dig your work. Now, again, this goes back to what I started at the top about that whole question of things that I'm doing for the business side as opposed to doing it just because it's me wanting to make art. Now, when I say that I want to focus just on writing and drawing and telling stories, that's not saying that I would stop doing anything that will help growing the business side. It's more about what are the things that are making me feel like I'm not doing art. And that's doing a lot of shows, doing a lot of conventions, and then doing a lot of projects outside of comics. Like I still really enjoy doing standalone art pieces, and I think after I finish a few comics, I probably am gonna take, at some point I would like to take a year and just make standalone art pieces just to see what the response is, because it could be that if the standalone art pieces were successful enough, I could conceivably have that be my day job, and then I'm still making comics. But I'm still doing the same thing of making comics on the side, but the rest of the time I'm working for myself. And like I mentioned before, the big challenge with that is that I have a good day job. And they have a thing called the golden handcuffs. When you're in a working situation that is going well enough, where let's say you've got a job, you're making good money, you're doing things you enjoy, you don't necessarily, in a way, it's a chain. It keeps you from taking a creative leap in terms of the direction you want to go in. And I think I don't even want to refer to my job as handcuffs, because the only reason why I would even think about leaving it is simply because I love comics. The fact of the matter is when I was a kid, what I wanted to be was a toy designer. I remember in 4th grade, I had to do a paper talking about what you want to do when you grow up. And my whole thing was I wanted to be a toy designer or a photographer. And now I'm literally doing what I said I wanted to do at 4 years old. I mean, in 4th grade. So it's odd to think of even doing something else. And I'm not sure, like, if there was a way that I could do both, I'll tell you this, if I could work from home, I would probably just stay in the toy industry forever, and the comics would really, I'd be fine with it just being what I do to relax. I think the big part of me, the dissatisfaction, really is only in having to get in a car, and, you know, traffic is horrible in LA, so everywhere I go, it's like you know, hour and a half drive. So that kind of sucks. But beyond that, I mean, it is a very fun gig. It's a great gig. So let's see what else is going on in the chat. Ion Rock said, in my mind, it turns out that character I told you about was just an angel. Some characters that we were talking about, and he thought it was one thing, turns out it was something completely the other. I've read some thoughts like the hierarchy and some Bible-related stuff. I don't see anything outside of Abrahamic headcanon. I know what's possible with an awakened human, and I keep seeing examples of it pop in the world of pop and in the world and pop media. Yeah, I mean, I've actually never even watched Neon Evangelion, but I remember people telling me that these giant aliens were supposed to be angels, and that's what they referred to them as, the creatures that they were battling. And I'm like, that's actually pretty cool. So yeah, it's nice to see these ideas expressed in different stories and different versions than just what Western religion or Western media has considered them. I mean, it's odd for me in terms of drawing all these angels and devils because I personally am not a particularly religious person. I just find them as visual imagery to be extremely powerful. I think when I draw them, I treat them more as mythology than I do as just Judeo-Christian, you know, ideals that I'm expressing, because I don't feel like I don't feel like it's my place to represent those ideals, being that I'm not necessarily a practicer of them. So it's funny. This page, normally I think I've mentioned this, I either mentioned this in my blog or I may have written it down, because I write my blog posts in advance and then just sort of post them just in the order that I come down. I say, what's the next entry? But I've gone very back and forth now on this idea of when I'm doing my inks, I've gone back and forth between doing a strong silhouette line versus going in and actually spotting my blacks and doing a lot of detail on the page, only because I actually do enjoy doing what I just did here, where at this point, I don't think I may even go in with my small brush and add any detail. I think that this is a pretty finished looking panel. But my general process for those I've mentioned before is I'll go in and I'll do a silhouette. And the thing I found is when I do the silhouette of the character and then just do the next silhouette through the whole page, the advantage of that, as opposed to doing the silhouette and then finishing it, is that it gives the page a chance to dry more when I do the silhouette and then do the next silhouette and then come back. So just for old-timey time's sake, I'm going to run through this page. As Michael Jackson says in comics, I'm going to do the old panels the old way. I'm going to go ahead and do the silhouettes for the whole thing and then come back and do the detail work. Well, then I'm going to come back and do and spot blacks and add shadow. And then I'm going to come back and add the detail with a smaller brush. So and it's funny because there's so many things that I would hope would be instinctual by now, but that I find I still have to intentionally remember, like really making sure that I give it a sense of the areas that are facing away from the light source, to give them that thicker line, give it a little bit more that sense of depth and shadow. But I am curious if you guys listening have any creative challenges that you're battling with, struggling with right now. I feel like at the beginning of a year, It's when people make resolutions of new things that they're gonna do, new approaches. And I guess for me, I didn't make any resolutions, but I guess what I said was I wanted to just spend more time making art because that's what makes me happy. Let's see. Some more in the chat. I see Sierra Studios has showed up. Thanks for popping in and joining the chat. Good to see you. Ion Rock says, I have a potato for a brain. Care to elaborate? I don't know. If I had to pick a vegetable for my brain, well, you know, having a potato for a brain could be very positive. It could be the fact that it has that nature of constantly sprouting, which is what I would like to consider my brain to be, creatively fertile, constantly sprouting and generating new things. I like corn, though. I don't think my brain is a cob of corn, though. Yeah, so major silhouettes of this particular panel. And I mean, I could just go in and finish it off, like finish all the blacks inside Lucifer, the shadow on his hat, add a little bit of shadow on this guy. But I'm gonna try to go back to doing it the way I used to do it, probably like in the past year. It's only, no, I would say the year before, in 2017, I had a really good flow in terms of like outline, silhouette, and then going in and doing form and volume. It's only in 2018 that I've really been easing up and playing more with just really trying to get the volume, using shadow to define form. I've been playing with that a lot more in this past year. You know, it was funny. I was drawing some hands the other day, and I actually got really upset. Normally, I'm not beating myself up that much about things, but I realized I got really upset at how bad the hands on a particular panel I had drawn were. Mainly because, I mean, I take a class on drawing heads, hands, and feet at the Animation Guild, and I take that class every year when it's offered. And I kind of thought to myself, well, you'd think I would be better at this by now. And I realized, well, I'm not taking my time to do figure studies in ink, at least not very often. I've done it a few times. In fact, I think I did it for the 200th video that I posted, which seems quaint now. Since I started doing the live streams, I don't even bother numbering the videos anymore. I just sort of put them up, and I still do the standalone time-lapse videos. And in fact, I'm probably going to do a few more of those in the coming year. I mean, it depends on what you guys think and what you guys enjoy watching, but I've noticed that in terms of like people finding my channel and subscribing and checking it out, the older videos seem to have more rewatchability. I don't know if as many people go back and rewatch the live streams as they did the 5-minute videos, the 5 or 10-minute time-lapse videos. So I thought, well, maybe I enjoy doing the live streams because you guys are here now. I don't necessarily have to have I don't have to think out the topic I want to talk about as much. I can just sort of start with something and then interact with you guys. But I do want the channel to continue to grow, the YouTube channel. So I was thinking maybe what I'd do is I'd have one video that's a live stream, or well, I'd have 3 live streams, and then one video out of the month would be a time lapse, a pre-recorded time lapse. So that I'm still doing those, and then the rest of the pre-recorded time lapse will actually be Patreon exclusives. So now, actually, that's one of my New Year's resolutions, is I don't want to wait till the end of the month to record my my Patreon exclusive videos anymore. Like, I posted a preview for one, that's sort of a tour of my mobile art gear, and I think I may have posted that on New Year's Eve. So I really waited till the end of the month to do that. Now, what I want to do is get to the point where either, well, I'm probably not going to do it this weekend. So maybe next weekend I'll post the next video for the month, and then try to do the Patreon exclusive time lapses at the beginning of the month, just so I don't have to think about it or remember that I have to do it. So we'll see. You know, life is a work in progress. And I always tell you guys to give yourselves permission to figure stuff out, to work stuff out, to just try, see how things do. Don't worry about it if they mess up that much. And I need to have the same level of graciousness with myself. I think I'm very forgiving of myself in terms of my flaws artistically, and I'm not as forgiving in terms of just the day-to-day living my life the way that I need to or want to. And that's usually more about, am I getting enough rest? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting enough exercise? Am I, am I taking care of myself? Which is funny because the other day, last night, I came out, not last night, but Friday night, I came home from work, and I worked out. I did some yoga, and I did yoga. I got home from work probably about 7 p.m. I did yoga for an hour. Then I took a shower. Then I made dinner. And by the time I actually sat down to actually eat, I looked up at the clock and it was 9 o'clock. And so that was 2 hours of just exercise, shower, and food prep, which, all day-to-day things that one needs to do to live their life. But then I thought to myself, well, in all this time, like if I were going to try and draw that night, by the time I finished dinner, it'd be getting close to, and then actually sat down at the drawing table, it'd probably be closer to 10 o'clock. And I know that if I start drawing at 10, I'm probably not getting to bed until midnight, 1 a.m. at best. So it was just interesting to me that I made it a point to recognize the fact that it takes a lot of time just to do the normal life maintenance things that we need to do, that we should do. I guess in a way that's, I don't want life maintenance to feel like a noose, but in a way it is. Only in the sense that I feel like I have to get a certain amount of exercise and get a certain amount of sleep in order to be healthy. Because if I'm not healthy, I can't create art. But the time that it takes to do these things leaves very little time to make art. And that is kind of frustrating. Let's see what's going on in the chat. See, Wiley Reed has shown up. Hi, Wiley. Thanks for joining us. I'm just drawing some comics here. And I know I said I was going to stick to silhouettes, but as I'm drawing this, I realized I really wanted to, I don't really have to. I was going to start filling in some of the ground, kind of this black area to kind of define. It's not necessarily foreground, because Lucifer is the extreme foreground. He's going to be almost completely a silhouette. But I realized that I do want to strongly define this piece of earth that's closer to him. see here. And this particular demon that's hanging upside down. So this is one of the things I mentioned about when I'm working, where I just do the silhouettes of the panels and move on to the next one. I mean, I would still probably be able to put my hand over this one because I actually did that, you know, the approach where I render in more detail, so it's obviously dry enough for me to put my arm on it. But I don't know if you can hear the meowing in the background. That's one of our cats, Khaleesi. Seems like whenever I am drawing at the drawing table, she always likes to pop up and say, "Hey, what you doing? What's going on?" And I'll tell you the real tough thing when I've got these multi-figure compositions. There's like a crowd scene that Lucifer's kind of preaching to, a mixture of rebel angels and demons that are kind of coming to his side. But when I've got these multi-figure combinations, fighting against tangents is just this constant battle, because every time I put a line down, I'm like, oh wait, that creates a tangent here, gotta move it. Well, that creates a tangent there, and it's just the constant back and forth, which it's just an interesting challenge to have to fight. It's a little mental combat. Now I need to hold on for a second because Khaleesi has jumped up on the drawing table, and I want to make sure that I'm not necessarily worried about her stepping into the ink. What I'm really concerned about is that I have a little table to the side. There she is. You want to say hi to everyone, Piggy? We call her the piglet because she always tries to eat her sister's food. So, but I have a small table next to me where I have my brushes, and the piglet likes to hop up on there, which if she knocks it over is going to spill the water I'm using to rinse my brushes. It's going to spill my water bottle. It would make a crazy mess. And now that I picked her up, she has fallen asleep in my lap. And she's just sort of like, all right, done with the drawing, huh? Good. You can just pay attention to me now. So, all right. Let me put you back on the ground and let me keep drawing, all right? There you go. All right, it's cat time. It's always cat time in the studio. You know, what's funny is I have a faux papasan chair. You know those round wooden rattan chairs? They make faux versions that are just like, it's just like a round circular chair with a metal frame. And I put that in my studio so that my wife would have a place to sit and just hang out while I'm making art, because I'm in here for so many hours that I wanted her to have a comfortable place to just, she can just sit there and read. She can just have her iPad and be looking up stuff, you know, doing whatever, watching something on Netflix, whatever she wants to do. But just, I want her to feel comfortable hang out in the studio while I'm working. Our other cat, Kachu, commandeered that chair. So, you know, now that chair is Kachu's chair. She doesn't have a place to sit when she comes and hangs out in the studio. And then Khaleesi started fighting. Kachu's our other cat, if you didn't catch that. They started fighting over the chair. But they're actually siblings from the same litter. And like much like real siblings, they will go from loving each other to trying to tear each other's eyes out. And Khaleesi got to the point where she wanted to sit in the chair. Kachu wasn't giving it up. And then Khaleesi would just freak out anytime I was drawing in here because she wanted a place to sit. And she wanted to either crawl on my lap or crawl on the table. To the point now where I found a second chair that we had that's not a faux papasan, but it's a nice soft chair with kind of like a flocking on it, like a folding chair. It's kind of a similar vein. And I put that in a corner of my studio, or as we like to refer to it in our house, the art department. And then Khaleesi has her chair to sit in. But for some reason, still, whenever I get up from my desk for a minute, it doesn't matter whether my chair is in front of the drawing table or whether it's in front of the table where I have my computer. If I get out of this chair and I turn around, I come back, one of them is sitting in my chair. It's like they are kind of like in the way that dogs try to establish an alpha male or establish dominance. The cat's trying to dominate me. They are literally like, that's where the person who controls the food sits. Well, my wife controls the food, but they're constantly just trying to take over my seat. So they are ridiculous. We love them, but they're ridiculous. You know, I guess I spent a lot of time thinking about the fact that I want to balance that art is not created in a vacuum. We create art, and it's a form of communicating ideas to the people around us and communicating the things that enter our minds, a way to reflect back society, the things that we see, that we think and feel about society. And I guess I spent a lot of time thinking about that balance between creating work that is joyful to me and inspiring to me, that also has value to the world. And also figuring out what that value is when you're doing something that's entertainment, because it's another thing that I struggle with. I do listen to podcasts about business and about marketing as part of the other side that I had mentioned about spending time on things that weren't necessarily art related, that were related to the business side of art, of selling art. And when you listen to business podcasts, they talk about expressing the value of your proposition and letting people know what it is that you're doing for them, to put the needs of others first. And I think that when you're dealing with something that is a luxury item, entertainment's a luxury item. And comics in specific, when there's so many other forms of entertainment, you know, most marketing is about finding somebody who really needs something and then providing that need and then letting them know that you provided that need. Now, the challenge is that art, well, you know what? I won't say that art isn't a need. I was about to say art is a need, not a luxury. But I know that I need art. I know that even if I didn't draw, I would need all the art books that I needed. In fact, if I didn't draw, I would probably need them more. But I know that I need to see visual expressions of things that don't exist in this world. I know that that is what gives me joy. And I think when you're talking about needs and it's not food, water, shelter, it's more difficult to talk about art in that way. Particularly because when you think of art with a capital A as something that has or can have a very deep emotional resonance in terms of its purpose, sometimes talking about it in terms of a commodity, in terms of the value it has, it feels like it can be sullying it or dirtying that artistic purity. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. I just think it's difficult to phrase it that way. Maybe it's just a matter of expressing the fact that you're saying things for people who don't necessarily have the ability to say it themselves. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because I know that for myself, I am a fan of art. I consume the art of others, even though I have the capacity to make art. I have the capacity to say. things. And the fact that I've even got this YouTube channel, the fact that I'm getting those things I say out into the world. You know, anyone can start a YouTube channel. Some of you guys on here have YouTube channels, and that's cool. I'm glad that you guys are sharing your work and putting it out there. I've discovered cool channels of other people just by them interacting with my channel. I guess it's one of those things that I don't know if it's a matter of commodifying what it is that we are trying to say or do and putting value on it, because in one way, much like artwork that is in museums, it's priceless. But because it's priceless, people will put a huge dollar amount on it. But it seems like society as a whole, as priceless as art is, society doesn't want to pay for art. And to a certain degree, I think artists really resent that. Some artists take the opposite thing and they end up devaluing their work. I think that I've been guilty of that in the past. But as I've gotten older and done more, I've come to realize that if I'm doing this thing and it has value in society, I kind of resent the fact that people don't want to... They seem to like art without valuing it. I remember there was something... I went to UCLA in my undergrad, and there was one day a year where they would take all of the sculptures in the sculpture garden on North Campus, and they would cover them in blankets. So we'd have a day without art. And the idea was that hopefully the people who were just walking around campus and didn't even think about the sculptures that were there would actually realize, oh, the campus is very empty without these things. And they really do enrich our lives. And it would just hopefully make people appreciate the presence of the art around them that much more. I don't know. I wonder what it would be like if the internet had no art on it for like one day. Like just a day without art on the internet. Oh, here's something that I was thinking about. So I've got my blog, and I write my blog entries ahead of time. And there was one particular post that I made the other day. Well, not a post, but I wrote down something for the future blog. The image that I chose as a thumbnail for this video, where it's got Raphael being hung, I looked at that image and I thought to myself, this might be the single best comic book panel I have drawn to date, in the sense that it completely conveys what I wanted it to. It's got just the right balance. It's not overly detailed. It's not underly detailed. It hit all of the marks. And the fact that I could feel that level of satisfaction towards that piece, and yet, at the same time, I still looked at it and was picking out multiple flaws and places where the anatomy wasn't quite right, where there were just little visual details that were off. And the fact that I think that that's one of the things that, again, you've heard me repeat over and over again, is continuing to pursue improvement without beating yourself up. And the fact that I could look at this and on one hand congratulate myself, and the other hand say, yep, there's a lot of things still wrong with this though. It's this interesting mental balance that I could be that satisfied yet still reaching. All right, this is interesting right here because I've got a tangent happening. and I gotta figure out the best way to fix it. Because I want to figure out volume-wise. I think what I was trying to do was have this hair spill over her shoulder a little bit. And I'm not getting it. You know what the problem is? There's not enough overlap in this. So what I'm going to have to do is come back in there and re-ink just this little region where the shoulder, the hair, and the wing meets. And I'm going to have to sequence them. Put one on top of the other on top of the other. See, that's what I was saying before. You turn your head for a second, and a tangent will climb up and climb all up in your artwork and mess it up. So you gotta be vigilant. So the karma police, I'm the tangent police. Well, I'm more like a tangent police cadet, because if I were really the tangent police, I would be much better at catching them. Now that I draw this, it just looks weird to me, having the wing come in front of that hair. That's how I drew it in my thumbnail, but I'm looking at it now and I'm like, that bothers me. It feels like this hair should be in front of the wing. And if this hair should be in front of the wing, that hair should be in front of the wing. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I draw or I lay it out a specific way, and then when I'm inking, I will come in and I will still find flaws and mistakes and say, you know what, that's not right. And if I'm going to do that, then I might as well put the hair completely in front of the shoulder. I mean, completely in front of the wing. And if anything, I will probably white out this line completely and move it up like just enough that it's not in line with this part of the shoulder. Like this, like I want to move it further away from this curve. So I'm not going to worry about this being a tangent. I'm just going to end up filling in. It's not going to be a full solid black. It's going to be sort of what I call textured blacks, where I do it, but I'm doing it in the direction that that thing is going to be flowing, like the hair flowing vertically as opposed to horizontally. So I can continue this line out here, the silhouette, and I'm not going to worry about that being a tangent because I'm going to cover that up with black. Let's see here. See a few more folks in the chat. UL showed up. Good to see you, UL. Said, yeah, that interacts with who sees it. I'm talking about art. I see Nathan Center. Hi, thanks for stopping by. And UL also says, finding the worth for the story is hard. Art is in everything man creates, from clothing to structures. I see Travis Frederick in there. What up, Travis? Yeah, I mean, now we're getting into some Joseph Campbell shit. I mean, and that's a deep, deep well when you start mucking around in the psychology of why man creates symbols. Because it's sort of like we create language, you know, to communicate with each other. And it's almost like we create art to communicate the internal, or the things that are, yeah, I guess the internal, the intangible. That's what I feel like art is. Art is the intangible. It's not the thing, it's the vessel we use to contain the idea of the thing. Like music. If you hear a beautiful instrumental, it doesn't necessarily mean this instrumental means X or Y or Z. A lot of times that instrumental means, or it represents or communicates just a feeling. Maybe it's a deep sorrow, maybe it's a bittersweet joy, but it has an expression that is not easily summed up. I think that art that's what art excels at, is communicating or conveying the abstract. I mean, sometimes art can be very direct and specific, But I think the things that I enjoy the most and the things that I respond to, and I think the best art is art that says something that's difficult to articulate. And you just look at it and you're like, you know what? I couldn't put it into words, but that's what it is. To me, that is beautiful art. That's powerful art. That is strong art. Even this, another tangent, because I see now the silhouette of her hand unbuttoning her shirt or opening her shirt. That I wanted, obviously, the shirt to be going into her fist, but it's going too much of a tangent. So I have to pull it in a little bit. Just enough. Just enough. There's a little space there. Okay. Well, we are at an hour here. So I think that I am just about ready to wrap it up. I see Travis says, looking good, Jeremy. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Ion Rock says, I have a terrible case of creative block. Maybe watching your work and seeing you go through the process is therapeutic. Well, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I honestly feel like the whole reason for me having the channel is simply, it's not about teaching per se. It's about just sharing my day-to-day battle at the artboard. And I don't really talk about it in the sense of a battle because I don't want it to make the creative process. I feel like putting too many negative tones on the creative process isn't healthy because it should come from a place of joy. And I think 9 times out of 10, what I'm doing comes from a place of joy. When I mess up and I have to fix something, it still comes from a place of joy. When I have a problem and I don't know how to fix it, the exploration of possibilities and looking for answers comes from a place of joy. And I feel like that's the benefit that I'm trying to share. But yeah, just the day-to-day, the hardest part, really, all right, you know what? We're gonna end the video on this. I'm gonna move the camera so that you guys can see something I have above my drawing board. So above my drawing board, I've got some figure drawings and a color wheel and some reference material. And then I have a sign. The writing is a little sloppy, but above a clock on my wall, it says, "The hardest part is showing up." So, we're gonna wrap this up. Again, I wanna thank all of my new Patreon subscribers. I hope that you enjoy these videos. Thank you so much for helping me create my work and supporting it. If you, the viewer, would like to support my channel on Patreon, go to patreon.com/Jeremy. If you'd like to read some of my comics, including the issues leading up to the current issue of Morning Star, go to comics.jeremy.net. If you'd like to purchase any of my comics or my art book, go to amazon.jeremy.net. So guys, thank you so much for meeting up in the chat. That's it for now. Go be creative.